Hi, everybody. I'm Grace Bubeck, and today's conversation is with Gail Brenner. Hi, Gail.
Hi to everyone out there.
So, technical issues are a bit of an issue today, but I'm happy to introduce Gail. Gail is a psychologist and lover of the truth and blogger, and I almost met her at the SAND conference last year. We were meant to meet up, but in the end it didn't happen. But then we met up online and decided to do a conversation. Gail has published a book also, which I read. It's called The End of Self-Help, which is a very provocative title. And, you know, I thought it was funny, Gail, because when I read it, what was kind of enjoyable was that it had elements of self-help. You know, like you had little exercises at the end of the at the end of the chapter, little, suggestions how people could inquire. And yet, very clearly, it's also written from a perspective that is not about helping people to get better with whatever it is. So it's not a self-help book. Maybe you could call it, one could call it a non-dual self-help book, or self-help book that really leads people to truth. Yeah. I don't know, but anyway, today's topic is separation dissolves in the embrace, in the heart's embrace. And I love that title. It's very poetic and very evocative. So I'd like to ask Gail maybe to just say a few things about that to start us off, and then we'll see where the conversation goes.
Sounds great. Well, thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me and being here. I do want to acknowledge it's Valentine's Day, so every day is a day of the heart, but maybe this one in particular.
Yes. Thanks for acknowledging. I meant to, but I got thrown by the technology, so. Go ahead, Gail.
The title, Separation Dissolves in the Heart's Embrace. So let's just break that down a little bit to start with what is separation? And I think we all understand at some level or know in our own experience what separation is. Because as soon as we feel pain, as soon as we're suffering, something has shifted in our experience to bring about that belief that we're separate, that it's actually a false belief, but something has gotten triggered, and the forgetting of the magnificence of our true nature has somehow happened. And we've gone into the mind and we believe the emotions that are arising, and the story gets going, and then we feel a sense of separation. But we all also know that intimacy, that delicious connection, which isn't even, again, any word I use here is not going to be an appropriate word, because there's nothing connected with anything else. It's that beautiful knowing of unity, of everything, of no effort, of timeless knowing, of being, pure being. And it's possible for us to inquire into separation when it happens, for that beautiful return to that non-dual, spacious state of being aware. So separation then, there's a bit of a paradox. So when there's some kind of psychological suffering, that becomes a gateway, and anything is a gateway. So we might say, oh, I don't want to be suffering right now, which is a pushing away of it. But if we acknowledge it and take it in, and we're curious and receptive and open to to this experience in this moment, even if it's a painful one, that can be a gateway in to seeing what's actually true about that, kind of discerning what's true and what's false. And the again, beautiful realization that this moment contains everything we've ever wanted and longed for. And I love that's possible. You know, I hear people say, well, you know, I've inquired and I still get depressed, or, you know, I've looked at the things that have happened to me in the past 1,000,000 times, and the feelings still come. And to me, it's not about getting rid of anything or expecting these familiar thoughts and feelings and patterns that visit us to go away and never appear again. It's not about, because that happens in time, and it's not about what happens in time. To know our true nature and to find true relief from our suffering, the true medicine of knowing who we are. So any sense of identification in any moment provides the food for our investigation and welcoming and loving and being with and totally allowing. And that becomes the beginning then of that relaxation into what we know to be absolutely true.
And you know, as a sister psychologist, you know, I kind of, I don't know whether you have that fascination, but I have a fascination with, you know, this moment of transformation, you know, this moment when the felt experience of separation, of suffering, you know, an emotion that's painful, or a belief that somehow just has a grip on us. You know, and there's a moment when that kind of just transforms, just kind of lets go. And then here we are, you know, in the fullness of life, of love. And I'm wondering, I mean, do you have anything to say about that? I mean, do you have a, you know, it's a how-to question, but to me, it's a totally fascinating question.
For me, the first moment that I find really, I find it all interesting, but that moment of realizing, oh, I'm caught in suffering. That's the moment right there, because that offers the possibility. There's always a sense of choice about what happens. You know, about where our attention goes. But that choice becomes really lost sometimes, and we don't feel like we actually have it. So say somebody's angry and they're just totally consumed in their anger and the story and the physical experience of anger, which can be quite intense. And it can be extremely consuming, with nothing seen outside of that. But that moment, like, oh, I'm really pissed off right now. Then I often see people sigh when oh, yes, here I am. And there's that beautiful gap that offers an opportunity to begin. It's a beginning there, a beginning.
Yes.
Where
it's a beginning. I mean, it's not, you know, the magic is only starting to happen, because, you know, with a lot of spiritual people, I mean, you know, it's like they know they're caught in something, you know, and they know that that first step of, you know, just becoming aware.
Yeah.
But, you know, then that's not all it takes. You know, there's something else, you know. It's like that's the first step out of the just being caught, just being caught unconsciously in whatever it is.
Yes. Right.
So
of waking up. It's an awakening moment in a certain way when we usually become conscious of where our attention has gone.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's a moment of grace, isn't it, always? Because the being caught, it's somehow like when the awareness dawns that we're caught, that moment, we can't make it happen.
That's it.
It's always such a gift.
I think that we can do things to invite that moment to come. We can't make it happen, like cause and effect, but we certainly, by investigating our experience and reading, books that inspire us and listening to programs like you and there's so many things to do to just incline the attention to where it truly wants to go.
Yes, yes. And I think there also is well, I'd say there's two things. There can be a sacred intention just to be more aware, to be more truthful with ourselves about what's happening. And there's also something, and I feel that really, that really kind of comes through in your book. There's this kind of almost this kind of spirit of just bring it on, I'm going to just I'm going to just use all of this to be more aware, to be fully, to investigate. And I just thought, it's something that's so alive in your book. It's very beautiful. Some spiritual books are quite detached in a way, and yours is very spirited. It's just that word kept coming to me as I was reading it, and it's very enjoyable. There's something very kind of alive and playful, and just very spirited.
And I love that because it's about being spirited and playful with what we might call our suffering. So we begin to not take it seriously. Or so seriously. We can certainly get into taking it seriously, but we can also go, it's just this story, and to take that lightly and investigate it. And what I've found, in my own journey is the willingness to just look at everything, to open up every door, to not hold on to anything. Or if I a holding on or an attachment, to investigate that. I of course, I think everybody speaks and writes from their own experience, and mine is that there were turning points for me, and one of them was to just go for it, like you're saying, in that kind of all-encompassing way, where everything becomes, every object that arises is something that can be fully welcomed, fully understood, and ultimately dissolved, which is what we're talking about dissolving in the heart's embrace, that heart love, acceptance, that deepest acceptance, that welcoming of it so much that the boundaries between whatever it is, a feeling, a physical sensation, it just begins to collapse and dissolve, and that's when we begin to tap into our true nature as being
Yes, it's funny, you say in your book, you were, every time some belief arose or some emotion, you sat on the sofa and you just kind of inquired, and I just kept seeing you sitting on the sofa, and it's like the sofa becomes the place of truth.
Yeah, that's right. It was my throne, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that is the fire that's, you know, I mean, I don't want to say that's true for everybody. For me, I just needed to know. I needed to inquire. And once I understood, I began to understand that these objects that I was taking to be real and identity, the identity of me, Gail, as this body, that started to break up a little bit. And then I just became willing to look at anything.
Mm-hmm.
I was willing to give up anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Yeah, it's a beautiful, it's a very inspiring. I mean, in that sense, the book is very inspiring because, it kind of carries the reader in that spirit. At least it carried me. There was something that was really just very powerfully alive and also inspiring, and it's interesting because, spiritual seekers always look for some kind of, in a way, a magical event of waking up. And then, all the problems are solved, and all the identity is gone. And, as more and more teachers point out, that's not how it happens. I mean, the identification and the, everything that's kind of still there in terms of the personality, it continues to have to be inquired into. It continues to have to be seen for what it is, and that's how it continues dissolving. So, in a way, it's like almost irrelevant whether we have big awakening experiences or not, because actually the dissolving, just continues to need to happen.
And that can be looked at any time. If say that someone is very new on this path and doesn't even really understand awakening or true nature, whatever, which is fine, still all know suffering. And this happened.
Somebody just joined us.
Okay.
So Pat, I'm going to mute you. Yeah, go ahead, Gail.
We still all know suffering. We all can understand identification and how identification limits us and makes us believe things that aren't actually true. We're all capable of understanding all of it, but that's a common experience that everyone can identify with.
So let me just play devil's advocate and ask you. So suppose, because as a psychologist, I'm kind of wanting to get the kind of psychological understanding out of you as much as possible. So suppose somebody sees that they got caught in a belief, so and so is really trying to hurt me, or let's say something like that, or you can use your own example. So suppose they see that that's what's happening, they have this belief, but it's like that in itself doesn't seem to be all that liberating yet, all that freeing yet, because even though they see they have that belief and the emotions that go with it, like feeling hurt, somehow, it's like that doesn't seem to be enough. So then what happens?
Well, there are many skillful practices to use. So I think that's where you're going with your question. So starting with emotions, it's understanding what an emotion actually is, that there's a mental component to it, which is the story of it, which even includes the label of it. Like if you say anxiety, that's already mental because all language comes from the mind.
Mm.
So it's recognizing that there is that mental component and also um, a physical component in the body, the physical sensations. So the mental component is about our experience, and then the physical sensations are the experience. They're what's actually here right now. So this is a, I guess you might say technique, but really useful to know as soon as you feel an emotion, don't even continue the story at all. And I'll speak about thoughts in a second. But go right into opening a large space. And again, words are failing here because we don't open any space, but we can center our attention into a spacious field of awareness and let there be space for those physical sensations to be, not with any goal of changing them or getting rid of them or anything. But this is what I did on the sofa for so long. It's the welcoming of the physical sensations, the allowing, and things might happen, things might not happen, and that's doesn't matter. But it's the completely being present with what's there in that moment in the physical realm. So that is one really useful, wise way to be with emotions. And then with thoughts, you want me to go on there, or do you want to go further into emotion at this point?
Well, I just, respond back to you about this. I mean, in my own experience, sometimes just being willing to feel the physical sensations actually allows for ease. Something eases up and somehow that whole emotion just dissipates.
Yes.
And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the just the willingness to be fully present, to feel what is there at a physical level of felt sensations, and to let the story go somehow, it doesn't seem to be enough. So let's just assume somehow that's not, somehow there's still something there that's kind of stuck or sticky.
And it might take time, we can think of it maybe as a process of the time and space for these sensations to come. So it's not only, it is in the moment, but it's also over time, because some of these emotions that we experience go way back in our histories to when we're very young, and say that we're infants pre-language. When we react to the world, it's with the physical body. So the tension and the holding and the armoring and the contraction happens very young, and if that hasn't had space to release, which most often it doesn't, for most of us or all of us, there are layers there. There are layers of contraction. So if you take one moment of feeling fearful or self-doubt or whatever it is, and you go into the emotion of it, and you realize the sensations happening in the physical body, that's why a practice around the physical body is so useful, just to open and allow, and everything in the recesses of the hips and the chest and the jaw and behind the eye, the eye, there's so much tension that can be held. And the goal is not no tension, get rid of everything. It's really about allowing what's here to be here and letting it all come to conscious awareness and being with it.
Mm-hmm.
So in any
Mm-hmm.
one moment, there's still maybe something left in the emotional realm, and that may be why. So more and more, there's this possibility of just being with what is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then something's still left, and we look at thoughts, and that's another area where we can investigate. And for me, what hasn't been helpful, I know it's very common to say, is that thought true? And it feels
Mm-hmm.
so true. You go, yes, it's true. You know, you have this thought, oh, I just messed up at that meeting. I said all the wrong things. You know, then is it true? Yeah, it's true.
Mm-hmm.
That seems very true, and it, you know, maybe there is some relative truth to that. So that, is it true? That really, that never worked for me, I have to say.
Mm.
So, things that are important to know about thought. First of all, it's really helpful to understand that I would say 95% of thought isn't really going to be helpful. So I've learned just to move my attention away from the thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
just to tell you, the screen goes black sometimes. Is that okay?
It doesn't go black for me,
Ah, okay.
so I'm assuming that it's just a temporary thing.
Okay. Well, you come back, so that's good.
Yeah.
But one thing I do want to mention here is about language, because thoughts are made up of language. Language is learned. I just looked it up a while ago. There are 6,500 languages in the world. So if you take a tree, and if I say, you know, think of an oak tree, we can all come up with a picture of what that is. And we've used, in English, we use the word oak tree to refer to that.
Mm-hmm.
There are 600, you know, 6,499 other words in the world for that particular thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, so it really helps to not take language as absolute reality, because it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think, I have a thought, you know, I doubt myself, or I don't feel good about myself, or, you know, to really look, what feel good about myself? What does that actually mean? And it
Mm-hmm.
starts to, that kind of inquiry starts to take away the power that thoughts have over us. And we can really wonder, what is this word that I'm saying? What is it actually referring to? What meaning does it actually have? And the answer is not very much unless we give it meaning.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. You know, it's interesting. I mean, personally, I find, you know, I've used Byron Katie's worksheets, and I find them very helpful. So I find the inquiry into, is this true? I find that actually quite helpful. But, you know, the inquiry isn't just about, is it true? It goes
Yeah.
from asking whether it is true into the emotion of it, into the, you know, what happens if you believe that thought. So it's like what that does is an inquiry that goes much deeper than just, is it true?
Right.
So is it true? Yes. I mean, you know, if the answer is yes, then you haven't gotten very far.
Yes. But you
And
get deeper with it.
And I agree, at the same time, I agree with you that it's generally helpful to see that thoughts are just not worth believing and taking seriously as we start off believing and taking them. Because yeah, they're kind of arbitrary in a way.
So we bring I want to say, a higher level of consciousness to our experience. So when we take an emotion and we can see the story, and we, you know, welcome, or, you know, open up to the physical sensations, and when we can see, you know, question thoughts, is that true? What is a thought? What is a word? How do words have meaning? these are beautiful questions to ask about our experience so that we can really get to the truth of it. Because when we do get to the truth of what's really happening, it all goes into the same place, which is no place, which is the understanding that reality is beyond the mind and includes the thoughts and the feelings, but it's the spaciousness that's beyond all of that.
Gail, I wonder, I'm just enjoying that moment of just being. And I wonder whether you would have maybe I don't know, a guided meditation or something that you could do with everybody who's on the live broadcast, just to invite them into the moment too.
Yeah, I would be happy to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
So I invite everyone here. You can close your eyes if that feels right for you, and often that does, to just minimize the stimulation from the visual realm. Just take a moment to just take a couple of breaths and be comfortable how you're sitting. There are words being spoken here, and you can take whatever resonates with you and let the rest of it go. This moment is really just about being. You'll notice that when we stop, meaning there's some silence here between the words, it gives you a chance to go in and see what's actually happening in your experience. Right away with the silence is a bit of spaciousness. We're just aware of what's happening right now. So there might be sensations arising or thoughts. So how much space can you make for all of that to be here? So welcoming is about being open, being available. Where we don't push any of our experience away or grab it and keep it here. Or if the pushing and the pulling happens, we notice that and we allow that to be here as well. So objects may be arising, a thought, a feeling, hearing the sounds as I'm speaking. But I'd love you to notice that in all of that, there's a sense of silence and spaciousness, where we're just aware. It's just this space, this experience of being aware. And see if you can explore that awareness. And let it be as big as it wants to be. What is that like in your experience to be aware? More and more deeply, see if you can open into this space of just being aware. You can feel this awareness expand out the front of your body and the back of your body. To the left and the right. It's above you and below you. And all through you. Notice the qualities of this experience of just being aware. You might notice an aliveness here. It's undefinable, but it somehow feels very vibrant and alive. So awareness often has different faces to it, so see how it is in your experience in this moment. Bring to mind, if you can, a feeling that you've had recently that you've had difficulty with, painful emotion. And drop that into this space of awareness. Just let that feeling be here. And see how that is from this place of being aware. What happens with that emotion? And if you don't think about that emotion and you just let it be here, what happens? And know that this space of awareness is not just yours. Everyone here listening and participating is experiencing the same. It's the one truth, the one reality. No separation here. the experience of the one heart. In a moment, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes. Really feel what your experience is like right now. And as you open your eyes, I'm going to invite you to open your eyes just for about a second. And keeping this space of just being aware. So open your eyes and then close them. You're simply here. Now try that another time. Just open your eyes for a second and then close them. Just being here. And then when you're ready, as you're ready, open your eyes and move around a little, and here you are, open, heart open, peaceful. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Gail. And, you know, I just want to share, you know, Valentine's Day can be very evocative. And I was sitting with something this morning that took me right back to my childhood experience of being the younger sister of my older sister, who, you know, very often just didn't want to play with me and didn't want anything to do with me. And so it still has some juice to it. And what was interesting was that when you suggested that we invite something, you know, an emotional feeling into that spacious beingness, I did feel that something I could see, you know, that there was this story that got created about me being left behind by my sister and not wanted. And it just started having a different kind of, I think it just lost a bit of its grip. So thank you. That was, you know, the idea of inviting it into that spaciousness was really powerful for me. So thank you.
It brings a different a kind of understanding when we take something common like a, you know, a painful emotion, and then we bring it into this space. It becomes uncommon. You know, it becomes a completely different experience of that emotion, and one that becomes more tolerable and doesn't have quite the same charge to it.
Yes, it became more unreal, actually.
More
you know? It just didn't seem quite as true. And you know, I have to say, I mean, it's not news to me. It's something. It's just one of those deep emotional traces that I carry, and you know, who knows? I may need to come back to it every so often, and maybe at some point it'll dissolve. You know, I really have no idea. But And you know, to me, there's a certain humility in that, and just realizing that some things will just maybe never go.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because you know, I know that in in being willing to bring all of myself, you know, true self, to this, it's like I know that I'm bringing this awareness, this truth, real being, not just for myself, but actually for everybody, because these emotions aren't actually finally all that personal.
Yes.
And my seeing them as not personal, my seeing that this is somehow something that God created, you know, and that ultimately doesn't have all that much truth to it. It kind of serves everybody who holds that particular, you know, that particular emotional story or charge. Because my seeing helps everybody else's seeing.
So beautiful the way you say that. And I was thinking exactly the same thing about not take, because that's very alive for me also right now,
Mm-hmm.
resonance here, of not taking emotions personally. That they are, and you know, you might have a personal story around it, but in a sense, it's not personal at all.
No.
And because there's no person for it to be personal to, it's an arising. And even in the human realm, it's an arise. Everyone knows sadness. Everyone knows, you know, being hurt or rejected. You know, there's a certain universality to it that when we see it
Yes.
that way, not only is it seen as not real, it also, for me, it just totally blows my heart open, because it just connects me to everything and everyone, and I have a deeper, um, you know, compassion. That doesn't even feel like, it feels like a 10% of what I actually want to say. You know, just like, I'm with you. I'm here. I know that. I know you. Mine too. You know, that barrier isn't there between
Yes.
others,
Yes.
me and others.
Yes. It's so, I mean, we're all, this humanity is just, you know, when we see it in us, we see it in everybody.
Yeah.
And it's, there can be such love for it, you know, and compassion and love. I mean, love for this, you know, this duality that we live in, and that we all somehow, you know, are called to understand so much more deeply, so that we're less in its grip.
It has its effects. One thing I've been noticing recently is in situations that come up, I more automatically now think of everyone and how it affects everyone. And I'm just noticing there's this opening happening where it just feels like I'm seeing it more deeply. Any situation, and it's not just about me or, you know, people I know. It's like, well, how about that other guy over there, or the one who's, you know, irritating me right now? What's his experience? And, you know, and there's an opening there around, you know, welcoming all of it, impersonally, but also very much in this human realm that we live in.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Gail, I wonder whether this is a good time to bring in people who are watching. I could what I'd like to do is basically just see what's happening on the YouTube thread. And then and maybe just read out some of the comments to you and see whether there's a question also. And also to invite people, if you'd like to come on to the Hangout and ask Gail a question or, you know, investigate something with her, you're very welcome to do that. I just saw a question pop up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to post the link to join us on the Hangout also on the YouTube thread. You will also find it on the Living from Love website, but I will post it. Yes, it's posted and it's live, so you're very welcome to join us. So let's look what's there on the YouTube thread. So there's Jody Nelson, who's joining from Santa Barbara. There's Wendy Ayat. And that was before we actually went live. Normand Bergeron from BC, Fernie, BC in Canada. And there's a question here by Ved Madhu. The question is, I find difficult to forgiveness. That's all they say. Do you want to comment on that, Gail?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think forgiveness is a tricky word because there's this should around it. I should forgive. And, you know, that's going to be the path to my freedom. And my take on forgiveness has to do, there's a bit of a twist on it because we want to forgive so that we feel better. You know, maybe there's something, you know, we want to, you know, be okay with the fact that someone did something that hurt us. I think there's an expectation in that. I think what we really want in forgiveness is we want to be at peace. So we need to look at what's not peaceful. And usually what that is some reaction that's within. So I feel jealous, I feel hurt, I feel, this isn't really feeling, but there's a victim, you know, I feel like someone did something to me and that shouldn't have happened. But we want to be at peace. So it involves, first of all, recognizing, I would say, first of all, the story, finding forgiveness in the story, getting the apology, you know, having the person, you know, say to you that they wish they hadn't done what they've done, you know, trying to have the talk to get what you're thinking that you need. It's great if that can happen, but often people will get the apology and that doesn't even really release it for them. So the release needs to happen here in our own hearts. So we need to look at the attachment or the expectation or the deep feeling that hasn't been fully recognized and felt and go there. So in that sense, it's really not about the other person. It's about our own suffering, and that we need to take a look at what's causing the suffering around whatever it is that the forgiveness hasn't happened, what situation that was. I can give you an example, which is that for many years I held resentments against my parents, like most of us, for one thing or another. And I had a moment of total light bulb went off, when I realized that the one who was suffering most from holding those resentments was moi, me. So, you know, it was being brought into my relationships and it wasn't helpful, but I was clearly suffering. And when I realized how much I personally was suffering because of this story that kept going in my head, it was an immediate release for me because I didn't want to suffer. And I didn't forgive so that I would have a better relationship with my parents. And I didn't forgive because I thought I was the kind of person, you know, a good person who should forgive and, you know, let things go. That's not why this happened. This happened because I was interested in not suffering. And I saw the extent of my suffering and wanted that to, I wanted to be at peace. So that was, for me, the motivator. And what happened as a result is better relationships with my parents, and I was happier, and you know, a lot of positive ripples from that. But it was really, in a way, I want to say, a selfish act because it was about my own suffering. But that it started there, and then it ended up being this, you know, wonderful expression of you know, having no barriers and allowing things to just be, and having that spread out to other people. So it was a beautiful experience for me in the end.
Yes, thank you. And, you know, I guess I would just add also from my own experience, one thing that I I always find when I do worksheets is that invariably, you know, the worksheet takes the focus away from the other person, from being on the other person, to something that's right here. And so I find that a good resource, but you know, for some it may work, for others it may not work. But the truth is that it's never about others, it's always about ourselves.
Right. And so if there's blaming and I'm a victim and it shouldn't have happened and all of that, that is not going to serve the letting go into peace.
Yes. Yes. So I'm just going to go back. Okay, so Madhu comes back. What about if you have to forgive yourself?
Yeah. And again, I would invite, I didn't get this person's name, Madhu?
Mved Madhu, M-V-E-D, Madhu.
Okay, Mved. And I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Again, it's really about this, I need to forgive myself is an idea. It's a mental idea. But it's possible that the emotions involved in that might be shame and regret and you know, a sense of having done something wrong and what comes with that. So the investigation would be, you know, personally, I would recommend letting go. I should forgive myself, letting go of that, and opening up more deeply into an investigation of what is actually his direct experience in this moment. What are the feelings? What are the sensations? What you know? And some of this might feel pretty yucky in the pit of the stomach, and you know, shame and feelings like that can feel quite intense and uncomfortable. But it's really allowing those feelings to rise to conscious awareness, and they come to be liberated. And the story of what happened eventually needs to, you know, you can work with it, but it doesn't help to keep that story going about what happened. And I also want to say you have a right to forgive yourself. You don't need, whatever has happened, whatever you've done, there's a part of you that is pure and innocent and have never been touched by anything that has ever happened or anything that you've ever done. And this is what's true about all of us. So understanding the identification as separate and then investigating that and releasing into the truth of our nature, which is formless and has nothing in it untouched and pure, that also is an avenue to release from things that we feel shameful about.
Mm. Mhm. Yes, it's so true, you know. It's like whatever you've done, you know, whatever you feel, you need to forgive yourself. That is also just a story.
Yeah.
And you know, whatever has happened at some level was just an expression, an innocent expression of being.
I also want to add apologizing and making amends and, as best as possible, really taking responsibility for what happened and in the world. It can really be helpful, in relationship to take responsibility and apologize. And if that's not possible in the situation, to write out an apology, to really feel that there's a sense of acknowledgement and of the possibility of understanding how someone else might have suffered and the possibility of letting that be.
Hmm. There's somebody else who comes in, Ekodar, who says, forgiveness seems to be the natural flow when we wake up more or come into harmony with life again. Is this experience shared?
It's shared by me.
Yes, I'd say it's shared by me too.
Things are seen more clearly. It's less likely that you'll hold a grudge against someone. Things are allowed more as the flow, as the unfolding that they are, and without that reaction. To being unforgiving, you need a reaction to something. So that shouldn't have happened, or I got hurt by that. And when there's less person there to take things personally, there's more of a being one with the unfolding of things. And there is a natural letting go and forgiving and not even being able to hold onto that grudge any longer. The grudge has to attach to something, to our idea of ourselves as personal and separate. And as that starts to shed and open, and those boundaries begin to dissolve, there is this natural forgiveness, and also it's momentary forgiveness. Where things aren't even taken in a way that they need to be forgiven. It's just, oh, this is happening now. Oh, this is happening now, and a flow with that, and a responding to that in whatever way the moment is asking for.
I wonder whether you would agree with that, Gail. You know, to me, a big shift for me was to see that also separation, you know, we think that separation between us and others, you know, but there's also a separation that happens between me and life. You know, life is somehow seen as separate.
Yes.
And then it's doing things to me.
Yes.
And so as separation dissolves, there's also just more of a sense of just things unfolding as they do, and trusting that unfolding, you know. So if somebody says something that may have been evocative before, somehow it comes to be less so, because that sense of separateness is no longer there in the same way. I wouldn't say it's dissolved completely, but somehow it there just is a sense of things being just fine as they are most of the time.
I love that you mentioned trusting life, trusting what's here and what comes, because the alternative to that is trusting our minds, our thoughts about things, our judgments, our evaluations, our shoulds, our worries about things. That's the stuff that rolls around in the mind. And if we're not trusting life, we're trusting the mind. It's really an either or. And if what's possible is just this letting go and into letting life carry us. And it's a completely different way of being. It's from doing and effort and the need to figure it out to the allowing and the receptiveness and just being with. And I love the phrase, oh, it's this, oh, this. It's this now. It's nothing more dramatic than that. It's not, it shouldn't be this, or I wish it were that, or, any kind of resistance in that way. It's like, it's just this, and this is what it is. And we can try to convince ourselves that it's not, but life is always here, and this harmony is always here. It's just about whether we realize that or not. And the realizing of that and the letting go of our personal needs and strategies and desires and really just for a second, just seeing, can I trust here, this, right now, and let it take me? There's a great wisdom in that's seen as we let go into that.
And sorry, Gail, there's another question that I'm aware of that I'd just like to bring in there. I think I may have just lost the YouTube site. It was a question from Jody Nelson. Give me just a second, and I'll try and get back to it. Okay, so there you go. Jody Nelson says, find it difficult to have such challenging emotions like fear and sadness. I feel they take over my whole being, and it's hard to move to a calmer, more peaceful yet stronger place. Thoughts, ideas.
Sometimes emotions can be very strong. Yeah. And, there's no magic here. It's really about finding that place within ourselves that can hold that emotion, because that place is here. And it might be as simple as tracking the breath, just bringing our attention to the breath and just settling. Just feeling it all the way into the belly and then settling in the belly and seeing if there's maybe a smidgen of space there that's not occupied by all the emotion. It could be as simple as that to start when those emotions are so overpowering. But even her asking that question says to me that there's already a little bit of space from the emotion. Because she's saying, I can see this emotion overpowering me, or I feel it overpowering me. So if you can say that, there's something observing that emotion, or feeling it, or aware that it's there. And that also is the beginning of, being expanding into that space of being able to be aware of that emotion. And sometimes, when it's really strong, guided meditations can help. So listening to them, and there are many around, you just might need some help from the outside. So it might be someone guiding you through, or of course talking to a counselor or professional who can help in a situation like that. But I also want to ask you, Grace, because I know that you have a lot of experience as a therapist. Is there anything you want to add to that about when emotions are so strong and overpowering?
Thank you for asking. And what kind of popped up for me, and I don't know whether that's for Jody or whether that's just my own strategy, one of mine, is I just go for walks in nature. And, nature just has a very soothing kind of influence. And energetically, an emotion is always a strong kind of charge. And so having some physical movement can start getting some of that energy to flow, and that's how just the strength of the charge can start reducing, and then it's easier to kind of work with it in the ways that Gail suggested. That's what comes to me. But ultimately, I think everybody finds ways that work for them, and that can be very individual in terms of being in a strong emotion and needing to just do something for that emotion to start unwinding a little bit. Mm-hmm. And for me, the energetic understanding is quite helpful. Another tool actually is EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping. Which is when you don't even work with the emotion as such, but just with the energy of it.
Yeah.
And the energy of it gets released, and that can be very helpful too. So that's the two things that I would add.
I'll add another one. I just want to say we're so much in resonance. Several times in this conversation, you've said things that I've already been thinking. So I was tapping, but also just physically, soothing yourself or hugging yourself, or that touch, that contact, that physical contact that you can do with yourself in a very soothing and loving way. That can also help. But in a time when emotion is really, really strong, do all of these things. Pull out the stops. Like really bring your attention to that, and to the possibility of being at peace with it. It's not just one thing for 5 minutes that's going to help. It really needs a lot of attention at a time when an emotion is strong.
Yeah. So I'd like to check before I go back to the YouTube thread. I'd like to check with the person who's on the Hangout, with Pat. Pat, I muted you, and I was wondering, are you on the Hangout to ask a question, or are you just on the Hangout watching? So I'm going to unmute you to give you a chance to let us know whether you'd like to ask a question. Can't seem to be able to unmute her. Could you unmute yourself, Pat? I don't get a response, so maybe she's just watching. Sometimes people, don't get the difference between watching on YouTube and watching on the Hangout.
Oh, I'm here, Grace.
Oh, you are here. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a question?
And I'm a guy.
Yes. So I hear. So we hear.
I actually just came on the Hangout because the reception was better initially than the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm here, and since you've been gracious to ask if I had a question, maybe I will say something.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And thanks for doing these, by the way, Grace and Gail. It's lovely to hear you and listen to you. I've got your book, and I'm slowly making my way through it. But if I could, let me just run something by you as a little summary of what I'm getting today from all that's been said. And that's, I don't even know quite how to put it. It's kind of how you were talking about it, and I appreciate the detail you go into it, Gail, about how how language, I don't even know that we do it, but how language and words and thoughts and feelings and emotions all create this illusion of a separate self that's having an experience that they maybe need to do something about, that's uncomfortable or is just not maybe, it's a mystery how all this gets coagulated and turned into something.
Mm-hmm.
This experience gets, turned into something that this self idea needs to do something about, or yeah, it's just kind of a mystery to me. And in thinking about this, thinking that I might ask a question, I was like, who's even asking this question? Who's even making this kind of statement, or who's aware of this this kind of dilemma? It's all kind of funny and mysterious. So it's more of a statement than a question, but if you have anything to say about that.
Sure. I get it. I hear you. And in a sense, it's mysterious. I mean, I could come up with some possible explanations, but I think ultimately it has to do. I'll mention two things. One is it's about where our attention goes. So we're humans, and as humans, we have thoughts running. We learn to speak. So once we have language, we can have thoughts running through our minds, or even before that, we have images. But we have thoughts, and then we have stories, and then we have feelings that arise, which are actually sensations in the body, but we give them labels, and then we go off and running with the stories around them. And that's part of what happens because of our human brains. And when our attention goes there, and that's seen as real, it's taken as real, this world that we live in is taken as real, we feel afraid and that feels real, then our attention has gotten completely consumed in separation. And which relates to the second point that I want to make, which is we have to know about this possibility. We're thinking creatures as humans, and we have to know that something else is possible. And some people kind of know that. They just know. They have experiences of, maybe spiritual experiences when they're young, or just a knowing that this is not all it is. And some people need to hear that message somehow. I was one of the latter ones. I needed to hear what was possible, and that got me really excited about this search, and really got my love of truth going. But our minds aren't going to tell us what's possible. So we have to know it some other way. And you know, maybe by grace we just know, or maybe we search and we find, or maybe we come across the right book, or we meet the right friend sitting next to us at a bar. I mean, who knows? But we need to get the message, know the possibility that something other than the reality that our minds created is possible, and not only possible, it is the true reality, that there's something else. And often it's our suffering. When we say it's for people who suffer, feel lifelong anxiety or lots of, you know, emotional pain of whatever kind, you have the thought, is this it? Like, here I am in this life. Is this how it's meant to be? Is this all I get? And a question like that is also a really a beautiful spiritual question if when when you keep going with it and taken to its extreme, because then you say, what is this reality? What am I taking to be true? And is there something else that I haven't seen yet? So I agree, it's a mystery. It's absolutely a mystery why we get identified as small and limited, when the truth of our being is that we are radiant beyond what our minds could ever think about. And here we are in this forum, having this shared understanding, or at least an idea about it, if you're here, at least something that's telling you there's something more than what my mind is telling me. And maybe it's possible that I don't have to suffer. And then that's a beautiful thing when we come together like this. And it ripples out in all of our lives everywhere, and really changes the energy of everything when we come together in this way.
So, Gail, I don't know whether you... Oh, yeah, that's it. Pat, I'm going to have to mute you again. Pat dropped out during your beautiful answer, so he'll have to listen to it. He'll have to listen to it on the video, on the YouTube video. Pat, would you like to come back to Gail about this? Or maybe that doesn't make much sense right now. Hello, Pat, can you unmute yourself?
Thanks. Yeah, sorry about that. I got a call from my wife and it just disconnected the Google thing. So there's the mystery popping in.
Yeah. Well, it's on, so you'll be able to listen later.
Yeah, thanks, Gail.
Well, thank you, Pat, for coming on and yeah, trying out this mystery of Google Hangouts.
I want to, I think, add something to what I said, if I could, which is it's a beautiful question. You know, it's a wondering. I wonder why, or how does this work, and that serves to a certain degree. But if we get caught in the why is it like this? Why is it like that? Why did that happen to me? Why do I feel the way I feel? That can end up being not so useful a question to ask. So, because it feeds the mind. So why? Well, I have to come up with answers. Why do I feel that way? And it takes us really away from our direct experience rather than more directly into it. So, so just to say, there are all different kinds of questions to ask, and the context, you know, might be appropriate for one question versus another. But when we ask questions, you know, and sometimes there can be a misunderstanding about inquiry, that it's just about more and more questions. It's some of those questions, they don't sometimes serve.
Mm-hmm. You know, and I'd add, I mean, why is I don't know whether I can say never a useful question.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't say either.
But you know, it just doesn't seem useful. So when I hear a why in my mind, I get very suspicious. And like you say, you know, the just being curious is much more helpful. And asking how do I actually even come to be here?
Yeah. And what is this? What
Mhm.
this experience I'm having right now? This you know, pattern I'm caught in right now. What is this? You know, and go deeper. What is this actually? Keep.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, beautiful. Thank you. So let me go back to the YouTube thread. Um, there is Madhu says her name is Victoria, and she says thanks to Gail and Grace. Dee Brown says happy Valentine's Day to Grace, Gail, and thanks for sharing with us today. And she has a question, and the question is, does healing come before opening in awakening? I ask because a chronic emotional pain will dissolve and then recur.
And just say it again, the first part.
The first part is, does healing come before opening in awakening?
I don't see them.
So I guess the question is, you know, is healing first and then awakening, or is awakening first and then healing?
Ultimately, there's no one to be healed. The healing, the ultimate healing, is to know that we are not the one who thinks needs to be healed. So once that's understood, it's all about opening. It's all about shedding identifications or ideas or thought patterns that we take to mean something important to our personal selves, and seeing through those and shedding them. So I don't see it as there is a point of awakening where you know who you are and then you never go back. You know, you might temporarily get caught in the mind or something, but you always can find your way out and you know what's absolutely true. But you don't need to strive for that, because there's so much that can happen along the way to recognize the ways that you get caught, and to realize what it is that brings suffering and what is the shape of that suffering, and how do you find your way out. And also to know that space of awareness, to if meditation works, or just to know that in any moment always there's this space that is just here, and it's peaceful and it's being and it's alive. So I don't the knowing of who we are and the knowing of who we're not, and the process of not believing those identifications or false beliefs about ourselves, that is the process of awakening. And that also is healing, because we suffer less when we hold on to less and less of what we think ourselves to be that's not actually real. So I don't see them as either or. It's really part of one whole process.
And then maybe you do need to be willing to just keep bringing awareness to that pain. I mean, you know, like some emotional traces are very deep.
Yes. They're very deep, whether, you know, for someone who really feels a deep sense of emotional suffering, that's what's asking for attention. So, and it's absolutely possible, you know, we do use the word healing, but it's absolutely possible to tend to that, to see what it really is, to work with it so it doesn't have so much power. All of that is possible. So that needs to be the focus. And then with that comes an understanding that it's eventually that it's not personal, and that it's an opening, and like I said in the very beginning, a gateway into who we really are. But that emotional pain, if it's there to a great degree, it's valid in a certain sense, and it needs loving attention brought to it.
And you know, I'm wondering also, because Dee says chronic emotional pain that will dissolve and then recur, whether there is a kind of thought that once it's dissolved, it should be gone.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, as emotions go, they come and go anyway. So, you know, it may go at a certain point because you're investigating it, you're inquiring into it, and then comes back for more inquiry or for more willingness to really look at it.
So not to see that recurring as a problem or wrong, or you're not doing it correctly or well enough. It's a natural coming back, and here it is in this moment. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I hope that's helpful, Dee. Victoria Madhu comes back with another question. She says, toxic people, emotional vampires, can provoke very strong negative emotions. They live out of emotions. How to deal with that? And then she adds, they can make you feel really bad and you feel them sucking up from your emotions, but you feel you can't do anything to stop it.
And you might not be able to do anything to stop the other person's behavior, but what you can do is bring a loving and accepting attention to your own experience. So it's really not about the other person per se. It's about your particular reaction that happens to be present for you. And there's something to be learned if you're being triggered by toxic people. There's something there. There's some identification. There's some hook there that that you can investigate. Certainly there's a practical answer to that as well, which is if you don't need to be around toxic people, don't do that. Find like-minded people who you feel a resonance with, and have that be your community. Not that we can always avoid toxic people, we can't, but we get to choose how we deal with our feelings around that and how we deal with them. And for me, it also helps to understand that one that I might call toxic is also suffering a great deal if their behavior is so challenging. There's a great likelihood that they're also suffering. So to know that potentially helps to take the charge out of it. But it's really our own journey. I mean, everything that happens, you said before, Grace, that we think something happens to us. There's a saying, it doesn't happen to us, it happens for us. So it's given to us, and then our job or our challenge is what we do with it then. What do we do with that emotional reaction that comes in response to someone else? And we can care for it deeply. You know, if we go into blaming, that's going to make things stickier. But if we let go of the blaming and see that as an opportunity to investigate something inside ourselves, then that gives a whole different opportunity to it.
Thank you, Gail. I hope that's helpful. I see one more comment there from on the YouTube thread from George Paley, who says, oops, sometimes these things just disappear. Loving hello to all from Buenos Aires on Family Emergency. Hope to see you soon back in SB. I'm assuming that's Santa Barbara. Yeah. So my sense is, you know, we need to kind of just let things wind down. Gail shared with me earlier that she's had a bit of a health challenge, so she's not at her strongest physically. And I think we've asked a lot of you, and you've shared, you know, your beautiful, heartfelt spirit with us in such a wholehearted way, in such a so just such a beautiful way, that I just want to, you know, I want to thank you for that. And I'd like to ask you whether there's anything that you would like to add to what has been said. Maybe there's something that just feels like it needs to be said before we end.
Love everything. Love, and when I say that, you know, I don't want to sound Pollyanna or, you know, have it sound impossible. So let me clarify everything, which is every sensation, every emotion, every urge that comes up to do something you know is going to take you down a path you don't want to go. Have great love and compassion for for everything that arises within your experience, and then begin to take that out to others. Understand the pain that others experience and love that, and find the resonance there because it's there, and let the personal boundaries dissolve so that your understanding is huge, and you know the heart that holds everything that we share, which isn't even correct. It's the one heart that's the thing that's come to all of us.
Thank you, Gail. And you know, as you say this, I feel also just the truth of this, you know, that radiates out from you. It's very beautiful, such a beautiful gift. You know, there's yeah, you know, I don't necessarily want to call it a transmission, but there's a being of what you speak that's very palpable, and that I'm sure people are touched by. And so thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. And I want to thank you for what you do here. I mean, this is such a service to people. So
yeah,
beautiful to know you and to have you be doing this.
Yeah. Well, it's really my pleasure. And let me just add that I do have expenses doing this, and I really appreciate donations if people are willing to just give something towards keeping on doing these conversations and retreats. You can go to the donate page on the Living from Love website, living-from-love.com. And whatever the donation is, however small or large, is very, very appreciated. Thank you. And I just want to say, Ekodar says, thank you. Thanks for your beautiful flow. Namaste. And Jody Nelson says, thanks so much, Gail and Grace, for this powerful webinar, so special on this day. And Anonymous says, thanks so much for being here, Gail. So, you know, people do appreciate these events, and I love the way that they're able to participate and communicate with us and be in that one heart with us. That just feels very wonderful, and it's always a source of wonder and celebration for me. Yeah. So, Gail, thank you again. And I just want to say Gail is joining us from the Caribbean, and I'm joining you from a very, very, very cold day in Canada, in the mountains north of Montreal. And the wonders of internet technology are really quite amazing. One of you joined us from Buenos Aires. So yeah, it's just, you know, it's like that's part of the awakening of humankind, is that these spaces become possible where we come together, and we are in truth with each other, and we inquire, and we simply put what's there on the table, and that's so touching for me. And you know, I just love doing this and bringing people to this table who will contribute their personal flavoring and their personal understand. I don't want to say personal, but you know, there's something personal about Gail being Gail and being the spirited, beautiful, radical spirit that you are. So yeah, you wouldn't be Gail without being Gail. Yeah, so thank you again, and thank you to everybody for listening, and for coming, watching, contributing your questions and your own inquiry, and we'll see you again soon. Oh, yes, soon will be next Sunday. There'll be a live conversation with Alan Emmett, and the Sunday after with Leonard Jacobson, and the Tuesday after that with actually with Byron Katie. So there'll be maybe even a possibility of doing the work with her. We'll see about that. It's not quite decided yet. So thank you to everybody, and goodbye.